Hi everybody, welcome back. My name is Catherine Hubert. I'm the owner here at Chez Genèse. We are diving in today and talking about how to have a conversation with someone about disability bias and how do we keep our eyes and our hearts and our minds open in that process. So last week, if you missed it, we talked about confronting disability bias in ourselves. What does that look like? And how do we become more aware of the bias either towards or against someone with a disability? So if you missed that, click over here and check that out. But today we want to actually walk through some examples of as we see that in ourselves or as we see that played out in spaces around us or with people in our lives. How do we actually step into some of those awkward, uncomfortable conversations? Awkward and uncomfortable because it is requiring us to step in with a level of vulnerability, not because what we're talking about is bad. And we want to give some tangible and some practical tools for how to do that so that you feel equipped or like you have a little bit of head knowledge or understanding as you continue to push into this area in your life. All that being said, please know that this is still an area that is relatively new to us and to me. It's something that's been stirring for a long time, and that from a personal standpoint, I'm starting to become, I think, faster in my ability to detect and understand bias, whether that's my own or whether I'm witnessing that in someone or something else. I am working on my speed in actually speaking up and saying something about it. I feel like I'm still slightly delayed, where it may take me a minute to fully process everything that just happened and then come back and be like, hey, can we actually talk about that? I'm feeling icky about it, or I don't really like the way that came across. Would you be willing to have a conversation with me about it? Or I don't like the way that it made me feel, or all of that. So where I'm at in my own process and journey is that I want to get to the point of addressing things totally in the moment and as they're happening. I'm there some, but not as much as I would like to be. So there's still a lot of growing that I have to do in this area too, but want to invite you as our community into that process with me and with our whole team. So to get us started and to kick off, baseline, the thing that we want to remember is to treat each other with kindness and with respect, to remember the human first, and to keep learning and growth central to the heartbeat of conversations and willingness to speak up. So the intent is never to put blame or shame on anyone. We want it to be a safe space to explore ideas and to have conversations, and for there to be respect and kindness in the midst of all of that. But we are also here to advocate and to educate for disability awareness and understanding, and want to take the opportunities that we're presented with in our own lives and in our community to actually step into that. As you're doing that work with us, what are some ways that we can actually step into conversation, keeping all of those foundations and principles in mind? Conversation is better than monologue. So it's ironic that I'm telling you that, because this is a format where I realize I'm giving you a monologue. However, when it's interpersonal and you're sitting across from someone face to face, rather than saying, here are my opinions about this subject matter or the thing that was just said, blah, 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 blah. Instead, inviting and asking for permission to step into conversation with that person, right? So it should be a consensual conversation. Like, we are both stepping into this, and not I'm imposing my viewpoint or forcing you to have a conversation that you do not want to or are not ready to have. But asking if something comes up. So an example being, we talked about this in our video a little bit last week, where when we get comments here in the restaurant of, "You're doing such a good thing here," instead of just assuming what's meant by that comment and then responding accordingly, saying, "Could I ask you a follow-up question about that?" And if the answer is yes, then saying, Can you expand a little bit further and tell me what you mean when you say a good thing? And then allowing that person to actually have space to communicate more fully what they meant. And then from there, stepping deeper into conversation. So if the response is something that is in line with the principles of value, or the values that we have in terms of respect and kindness towards all humans, and specifically humans with disabilities, then affirming that and saying, "Thank you so much for recognizing that. We really appreciate you taking the time to say something." If that comment pushes into the narrative of disabled humans are humans to take pity on, or a charitable cause, or you're doing such a good thing because you're helping people with disabilities, then that's an opportunity to say, "Actually, do you mind if I walk you through a little bit more of my perspective and my reasons behind our business model and why we do hire the way that we do?" Providing a little bit more context. Okay, how does that make you feel? Do you have questions about that? And then stepping into it versus making an assumption, putting judgment or blame on someone because of that assumption, and then really closing off the door or opportunity for them to engage in conversation with me or with another teammate. Another example could be, as someone says something and you may have questions about it, being like, "I'm intrigued by what you just said. Do you mind, would you be able to give me some more information or context around what you're thinking or what you're feeling when you say that?" It's a little bit more neutral in language. It's not accusatory. It's being curious. It's asking and kind of like teasing out other information, and then providing some space to actually engage with or in conversation. That's going to require bravery and vulnerability on all parties who are entering into that conversation. But the hope is that as we practice doing that, safety is communicated and we start to shatter more of the silence that has kind of calcified around the area of disability and disability language and conversation. It's hard to talk about something if you feel like you're going to say the wrong thing, or you're going to be shamed for what you say or how you say it. So there's a real fine line there, and I don't think that we always get it right. We're practicing and certainly making mistakes in the process, but wanting to step in with a level of humility and willingness to actually hear another person and to understand, while also still standing up for the value system that we do hold in practice towards humans and towards disabled humans in particular. So that kind of goes into the last point of keeping our minds, hearts, and eyes open. It is challenging, or I find it challenging in my line of work to hold the balance of being soft and strong. Soft, I want to be tender and be open to the feelings and the thoughts and the stories of the people in my life and that I am surrounded with, while also not doing that at the expense of my own identity and my own character. So being willing to take in the feedback, the perspectives, the emotions, and to actually hold that and consider it, while also being able to still stay rooted in who I am as a person and who our business is, and not being shaken in that, while also still willing to be moldable and recognize when we or I do something that causes harm or pain, and taking ownership in that and stepping forward into apology and restoration. So that's it for today. Conversation versus monologue when you're approaching discussion around disability bias in yourself and the people around you, keeping our minds, hearts, and eyes open to the humans that are in our lives and being impacted by them, but still staying strong in our own identity, and not losing our freedom. Our door is so squeaky. Bye, Anne-Marie. Not losing sight of who we are in the midst of that. And then asking for permission to step into some of those tricky conversations with other people, and being willing to actually have the discussions and step into a deeper understanding or a more full picture of disability. I think that's the end of that sentence. I was trying to see if that went anywhere further in my brain, but I think it should just be period and there at the end of that. So that's it. If you have questions or comments, please leave them below. If you don't already subscribe to our channel, if you'll please consider doing that as well. That helps get our message out to more people and also ensures that you don't miss our content. We post every Wednesday, and we are so grateful that you're here. Thanks for being part of our lives and our community, and we look forward to seeing you next week.